Really appreciate all of you joining me here today. This is being live streamed into Facebook and also recorded for YouTube. So if you're watching this recorded, thank you for watching. I want to make this as interactive as I possibly can. So I've got close to 90 minutes worth of content, depending upon how many questions people ask. And I want to encourage as many questions as possible. But if you're watching live, I definitely want you to post questions so I can make sure that I'm clear in the information I'm providing. And if you have questions about something I'm not talking about, free game. Go ahead and ask it. I'll make sure that I cover it. If I'm covering it later in the presentation, I'll let you know. If not, then I'll cover it right then. My goal is to make this as valuable of information as I can to help you navigate the home buying journey. I do this every single month, typically the third Thursday of the month. Although this month I postponed it because I had a bunch of people who couldn't make it last week because of the Kings game. Unfortunately, did they win last Thursday? I think they won last. No, they didn't. Anyway, the point is that we postponed the meeting to this Thursday. But typically it is the third Thursday of the month. So I really appreciate all of you guys joining me tonight. And let's go ahead and dive in and get started. So first of all, get past that slide. First thing I always cover, this is a monthly recurring meeting that I do that has a couple of recurring portions and then a couple of parts that are new and different every single meeting so that you can go back and look at the library on my YouTube channel of different topics of what I've covered and really cover all of the different aspects of buying a home, especially as a first-time home buyer. But please don't misunderstand, this is not solely focused on first-time home buyers. We all need a refresher course sometimes. I know I've bought, 5 or 6 homes in my life, and every time I do it, it is a stressful process. And it really helps to get a refresher course on what's going on. This absolutely will serve as that refresher course for you as well. All right, so one of the questions I get all the time is, John, is this a good time to buy a home? And so I update you every single month in this masterclass on my answer to that question. I also provide a lot of content at least once a week on Fridays. I put out some videos on my YouTube channel. So you can search John Lone King on YouTube and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. There'll be a QR code at the end of this presentation for you to be able to subscribe to that as well. And really helping you understand what's going on in the market. Because I don't know about you, but I get kind of annoyed when every time I talk to somebody, they're like, oh yeah, I'm in car sales. Oh good, is it a good time to buy a car? Of course it is, because I'm in car sales, so you need to buy a car. I don't believe that. I think that it's about your circumstances and what's happening in your life at the moment. What I'll tell you first and foremost is really at any point in any market, it's a good time to buy a home if you're going to keep it long-term. And people misunderstand that and they say, gosh, John, my parents bought a house in 2005, and if they would have known that the market was going to crash, they should have bought their house in 2009 when the prices were a whole lot lower. Well, yeah, if we all knew that Tesla was going to skyrocket in price and then come back down in price, you would have bought before it skyrocketed and you would have sold when it was at the top. But that's just not normal. That's not possible for somebody to predict the future. And so the first key to, is this a good time to buy a home, is how long do I plan on staying here? Because if you plan on staying in the home longer than 5 years, and really, especially if you're planning on staying in it for 10 years, there is no such thing as a bad time to buy a home. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk about the financial benefits of home ownership. What you'll see is there's a lot of benefits you get from being a homeowner, 3 in particular, which is a tax write-off, a forced savings plan, and depreciation in your home that you don't get if you're a renter. And so the longer you wait to become a homeowner, the more you lose those benefits. But let's talk specifically about what's happening in April of 2023. First of all, we've got a huge run-up in inflation that's been happening for the last year, and that's drove interest rates way up. Interest rates hit their peak of about 7.5 in October. They came back down to around 5.9 in January, and then in February, they shot back up to a little over 7% again. Well, they're hitting back down into the lows to mid 6s right now. So rates are coming back down some, and I expect them to come down lower over the next 12 to 24 months. Now, I know that's a long time frame, but we've got a lot of volatility in the meantime. We have a lot of unknowns that's going to happen with inflation, what's going to happen with the economy. But here's what all of it's going to mean ultimately. We're going to see interest rates come back down. And when we do, a lot of buyers are going to jump back into the market. And when those buyers jump back into the market, prices are going to go up. If anybody paid attention, almost a month ago, actually exactly a month ago, state of California launched a program called California Dream for All. And that program was amazing. It provided you with 20% towards the down payment assistance. It was a great program. They had $300 million available for the program for the state of California. And the money disappeared in 8 business days. That's it. 8 business days and the money was gone. So for those people who were lucky enough to get that, that's great. But here's what it proved. It proved that there's a lot of people wanting to buy, and they're just waiting until the payment drops because they only had to pay on 80% of the purchase price. And so the demand was huge. And that actually drove prices up for that 2-week period, simply because everybody was trying so hard to get into a home. And now what's happening is those people have gone back on the sidelines and said, hey, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until the Dream for All program comes back, and it will. I just don't know when. But when it does, they're all going to jump back in and prices are going to jump up again. And also, even if the Dream program doesn't come back anytime soon, if interest rates fall enough, those buyers are jumping back in anyway. Now you're saying, John, you're saying that like it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, except it's more competition because we don't have enough homes for sale. And that's really not going to change until we build more homes. So we've got a shortage of homes, and you have a glutton of a high amount of people wanting to buy those homes. And so that means that when those people jump in to buy homes, prices go up. Your most important thing to be thinking about tonight as you are talking to me and listening to me for the next 90 minutes is, can I afford the monthly payment that's going to cost to buy a home today? Even if I have to bite the bullet and sacrifice on some other things that I'm spending money on right now, it might be worth it. Because otherwise, I'm going to end up buying a house when, yes, rates are lower, but prices are higher. And with that higher price, you're going to have to make a higher monthly payment on your mortgage, and you're going to have to put a bigger down payment. But if you can afford to jump in the market now, so you got to be able to afford it, you also have to qualify for it. I'm going to talk to you tonight about what banks look for to qualify you for a mortgage. Now, in order to qualify for the mortgage, once you qualify for the mortgage and you're comfortable with or willing to accept the monthly payment, the great news is that's pretty much the most you're ever going to spend on a house payment until you move to a bigger home, because house payments go down over time. You get to refinance your balance when the interest rate drops. You have the opposite effect of rent, where rent's going to keep going up over time. You're going to be able to start here at this payment and get it lower as interest rates drop and you refinance. So that's really the key is, should you buy a home now? First and foremost, if prices do fall, they've never been worse off 10 years later than where they started at any point in the last 60 years. So if you're planning on staying in the house for at least 10 years, history's on your side. That says even if the biggest market crash should happen in 2007 and 2008, by 10 years later, prices were back above where they started. So it's really, really important to think about time in the market instead of time in the market. But I got to tell you, it's a horrible time to buy right now if you can't afford the payment that comes with these high interest rates. The payments have gone up significantly. You're looking at, $3,000 a month for a $400,000 home. Now, I know I'm talking to people all over the state of California that might be at significantly higher prices or significantly lower, but that's just a starting point to say a $400,000 home with minimal down payment, and you're looking at $3,000 a month. That's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people that either A, can't qualify, or B, they just have other bills that make it a priority to cover. It's a priority to send my kids to gymnastics and swimming and basketball. And it's important to do those things. So I'm not a fan of being house poor. I'm not a fan of saying, do whatever it takes and stop buying coffee every morning from Starbucks. Look, if Starbucks makes you happy, then do it. But if you're this close to being able to afford a home and you're just holding out because you're hoping that rates go lower, but you have some things that are optional that you could decide, hey, you know what, I don't necessarily want to do that versus buying a home, Now is a great time to buy a home because you're able to take advantage of the fewer buyers that are buying right now. Now realize we're going to see a lot of volatility. We got a lot of real news and we got a lot of fake news that's happening right now. One of the biggest pieces of, well, real news that's turned into fake news is the news articles that have been going around for the last 30 days saying that President Biden is making mortgage rates more expensive for the best credit borrowers starting on May 1st. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the details. I actually have 2 videos out about this, one a week ago that's about 5 minutes long, and one that I posted just today that's actually 30 minutes long that goes into detail about, well, what is the truth about that and what really is happening? But the truth is there are changes happening to mortgage rates and there are changes happening to guidelines. And the great news is they're focused on helping first-time homebuyers purchase homes. All the stuff you're hearing in the news right now about Biden changing things on May 1st, first of all, those things changed 45 days ago, and my video explains that. But more importantly is most of those changes are actually helping people who maybe have had a hard time buying a home because they don't have a lot of money for a down payment, or they've struggled with their credit and they don't have perfect credit. These changes are actually in your favor, and they're going to help you be able to buy a home going forward. And so the government really is focused on how can we help increase the rate of home ownership and help people build long-term generational wealth through being a homeowner. All right, so I'm going to switch gears. Again, if you're watching live, feel free to post into chat just so I at least know you're live and I haven't put you to sleep. Also, if you're watching recorded, post a comment into either Facebook or YouTube, and I would be happy to answer questions for you as we go. So let's talk about the topics that I want to cover today that I've never covered before in my How to Buy Masterclass. And tonight's focus is how to pick your realtor. Now, I actually have a couple of realtors on here right now, so this will be an interesting conversation. But the truth is, picking a realtor is a very, very important part of the home buying process. And it's a very, very important part of being successful in the home buying process. And so I'm going to start with the 3 things that I think are critical on how to pick your realtor. The first one's experience. Now, maybe it's experience of how long they've been a real estate agent, and maybe it's not. I will tell you that tenure, the amount of time somebody has spent doing something, is not always indicative of their ability to do that job well. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's a negative. Sometimes they aren't willing to look at new ideas or different ways of doing things. And so experience really is about, does it match what you're looking for? And do they have experience in the market that you're trying to buy in? Now, market could be geography, like physically, where is the home located? And does that realtor do business in that market? I think that there's a lot to be said for a realtor that specializes in a particular region, whether that be a city, a county, a neighborhood. The realtor can understand that community really well. Now, that doesn't mean a realtor can only focus on one community or one neighborhood. I know some really great realtors in the Central Valley that cover all the way from Tracy up to Sacramento, and they do an amazing job, but they don't try and sell a house in LA. First of all, they're not very close by. They're not going to be able to help you get into that house. And secondly is they're not an expert in that marketplace because they don't do enough business down there. So make sure that you've got a realtor that understands the market that you're buying in and has experience. And you know that just through talking with them, and ask them some good questions. Ask them about what their experience is with helping people like you and what makes them think that they're a good fit to help serve you. It is truly an interview process. It is no different than picking a lender. I hope and expect that everybody who's watching this, whether you're watching live or you're watching recorded, I'm being interviewed right now. And I want to be interviewed. I want you to decide, do you think my knowledge and my experience resonates with you? Does it speak to who you are and what you're trying to accomplish? If it doesn't, don't pick me. But if it does, I'm here and I'm ready to take great care of you, and so is your realtor. Now, the second thing about picking a realtor is recommendation. Talk to people you know who have purchased a home before. If you don't know anybody and you've decided, hey, I like that John King guy, ask me. I have amazing realtors that I work with all up and down the state that I can connect you with. Now, I don't care who you work with, meaning if you have a realtor, you can choose any realtor you want. You can choose any lender you want. Some people are going to tell you that you should always use the realtor's lender. Always use the person that the realtor said you should work with for the lender. There's a really, really important key point there, which is the realtor has tested that lender and the realtor has vetted that lender and knows the lender is going to take good care of you. That is absolutely important. The second thing is that realtor and lender have a good working relationship. That also is very, very important. But beyond that, really, it's about finding whether it's a realtor and lender that don't know each other. As long as they're both good at what they do, we can pick up pretty quickly and build a rhythm to help take good care of you. But it is about great communication between you, your realtor, and your lender. And so it's important that you give both parties, your realtor and your lender, permission to speak freely about your transaction. Raina gave me 100% high five. I agree, Raina. Raina is one of the realtors that I trust that helps serve my clients, and I help serve hers. But here's the deal. It's about having good communication between your realtor, and your lender. And so you want to make sure that you give your lender permission to share details with your realtor about your qualification, about your goals, about what you're trying to accomplish. You also want to make sure you do the same with your realtor, because the more we can communicate and collaborate, the better off we are. But back to recommendation on how to pick your realtor, ask people you know. Look for signs of good service. Go look people up on Zillow has reviews, Yelp has reviews. I'm not telling you pick somebody simply because of what Zillow said or what Yelp said, but it's a piece of it. I'm a huge fan of talking to your friends, talking to your family, and getting a recommendation from them as well. Andrelli says communication is key with your realtor and lender. Exactly. Like, it is critical that to be successful, we all have to be communicating on a regular basis. And it's kind of important, and I know this is kind of a side note, but you got to make sure that the people you're working with don't have a huge ego that have to be right. Because being right, if your realtor or your lender are so focused on being right, then they're not focused on serving your needs the best they possibly can. I'll be the first one to admit when I'm going the wrong direction, or when somebody has a thought and it's like, you know what, I didn't think about that. Yeah, I agree. Because this isn't about me and my ego. I believe I'm very, very good at what I do, but I'm not infallible. I'm not perfect. And so it isn't about proving that I'm right. It's about taking the best care of you, and make sure that your realtor and your lender are doing that for you. All right. The last piece I'll tell you about how to pick your realtor is style and personality. I think it's critical. I'll tell you what, especially your relationship with your realtor, you're going to spend so much time with your real estate agent during the home buying process. If there isn't a match, if they don't have the same style you do, they don't have the same personalities you do, it's going to drive you crazy and it's going to be a bad fit. So make sure that as you're talking to your real estate agent and figuring out if they're the right person for you, if it doesn't feel right, it's okay to say that. It's okay to find a different realtor. You just have to understand your realtor isn't paid by the hour. Your realtor does not make any money simply by showing you homes. The realtor doesn't get paid by the seller for taking you through the property. Now, I'm not telling you that you owe the realtor anything. I'm telling you, understand that fact when you're talking to your realtor and you're saying, hey, you know what? I'm not sure if it's working out with this realtor. I'm going to go try 2 or 3 other ones at the same time and see which one matches me the best. You're doing yourself a disservice as much or more than you're doing the realtor a disservice. The truth is, yeah, you're costing 2 of those 3 realtors any income they might be getting from the work that they're putting into taking care of you. And that is an important piece to think about, but you're also shortchanging yourself. Because if you have 3 realtors out looking for you to find a home at the exact same time, when we talked about communication, there's 0 communication because those realtors aren't talking to each other, are they? They're working as independent contractors. And so you might tell one of them, hey, you know what? With this house we just went to, I love the kitchen, but the master bedroom is too small. Well, now they know that a particular kitchen is important to you. Now you go with a different realtor and you look at a house where the master bedroom is perfect and the kitchen is too small, and you tell them, hey, you know what, this kitchen's too small. But you never told that person the master bedroom is perfect. So they'll find you a bigger kitchen that has a smaller master bedroom because they only have different pieces of the puzzle. You need to give all of the pieces of the puzzle to your realtor. So make sure you find somebody that has a good match of style and personality. And I'll tell you, social media is a great place to figure that out. You can listen to people like me on YouTube and say, you know what, I like his style, I like his personality, or you don't. That's your call. But you can also see that with realtors as you're seeing what they're putting out on social media, how they interact with their clients and other people. And you get a really good feel of, hey, is this the right person for me? All right, so continuing with realtors, let's talk about the brokerage. What the heck is the brokerage? Well, you've heard before the term real estate broker. Well, a real estate broker, most realtors aren't brokers. So the real estate broker is often either the company they work for. By the way, the company is called the brokerage, but the broker is the person who is licensed as a broker, because a real estate salesperson must work under a broker. Now, some realtors are both. So some realtors are going to be a broker and a real estate salesperson. Just to understand, the broker is the person they work for. It's their boss. And so sometimes that's simply a person behind the scenes. Most of the time, it's a person behind the scenes you're never, ever going to talk to or hear from. They really are there as a mentor and a guide to your real estate agent to make sure that they're going down the right track and taking great care of you. But the second piece is, does it matter what brokerage my realtor works for? Angelique said there is a difference between a salesperson and a realtor. Well, Angelique, I'd love to have you give me a little bit more insight into what you're saying there, but I'll take a stab at what I think you're saying. There are salespeople in every industry, and sales is kind of a 4-letter word, even though it's a 5-letter word. It's a 4-letter word because people look at sales as a negative. They look at, oh my gosh, somebody's trying to sell me something. And there's a big difference between a realtor who is a salesperson versus a realtor that's going to look out for your best interest and take great care of you. And so that is important to understand. Are you working with somebody that really is in this for your best interest? Because guess what? Oftentimes, a great realtor is going to talk you out of buying a home. Guess what? That talked them out of making a paycheck. That's like you talking your boss out of telling you to come to work today or this week or this month or this year because, hey, boss, you could actually get a computer to do this for cheaper than what you're paying me. Well, that's great, but you're talking yourself out of a paycheck. And a great realtor is going to do that. A salesperson is looking for a sale. So I'm not sure if that's where you're going, Angelique, but that's how I took what you were saying, that there is a very big difference between a salesperson and a realtor. Here's where I wanted to go with this. The second bullet point here is, does it matter what brokerage the realtor works for? You've got realtors that work for Remax and Keller Williams. You've got realtors that work for their own company and a very small company, whether it be them and a few people or just them. And I get a lot of questions. Okay, Angelique, I went the wrong direction with what Angelique was saying. Anyway, I get a lot of questions from people saying, John, should I work with a broker, with a realtor who's with XYZ real estate or ABC real estate? Which company should I work with? I got to tell you, I don't think that's a real big difference. There's a little bit of difference in the internal workings of how the companies do business, and it matters most to the real estate agents which brokerage they choose to work for. But you're hiring a person, not a company. So when you think about who you want to work with, find a person that fits your needs. You're not looking for a company. You're not looking for, gosh, I've got to work with this company because they're the biggest and that makes them the best. It's the person that makes this transaction the best. And it's the person that'll make this transaction the worst. So really, really important to understand that. All right. So what's the role of your realtor? So the first thing is to help you find and access properties. Now, what's interesting is this used to be, in my view, the most important thing that realtors did is they had access to the MLS. They had access to the information about what homes are listed for sale and how much they're listed for. And they were your key, literally key, this is a pun, they're your key to get into the home. Well, that isn't necessarily true anymore. Technology has changed that. You can Google and find all of the information about almost all of the homes that are listed for sale. And there's even situations where they can use AI to get you into the home without a human being being present. Now, it's not that common, but it is happening where they're using computer systems to unlock the door. And so you just have to confirm it's you. You scan a QR code, the door unlocks, and you get to go into the home, and no human has to be there with you. Well, for some people, I guess that's a good thing. But the truth is, finding the home, whether you go to an open house, you don't need a realtor to help you walk into an open house. There's already one there. I'll talk to you in a couple of minutes about whether that's a good idea to work with that realtor or not. But the fact of the matter is that the thing people always thought realtors were needed for is finding the home and getting access to it. And some people say, John, do I even need a realtor? Because I can find the home and get access to it myself. I'm going to talk a little bit more later about, do you really need a realtor? But here's the reality. The reality is there are 3 other major things that a realtor does for you that you cannot give up. The first one is they advise you. Now, maybe that's advice on what other neighborhoods you should be looking in. I actually live in the home that I live in right now. I never expected to buy in this neighborhood. I honestly didn't even know this neighborhood existed. And I met a realtor in a totally different neighborhood and was walking through an open house, and she started asking questions about what we were looking for and told us, hey, have you ever thought about that other neighborhood in the other town down the street? Because it sounds exactly like what you're looking for. And I kid you not, 2 years later, and I own a home there. So it's really about having a realtor that understands you and gives you really, really good advice. Maybe that's advice on, what type of inspections you need, which is something we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes. What do you want? Sorry, I got distracted for a second. What inspections do you need? You need a home inspection. You need a roof inspection. We'll talk about the inspections in a couple of minutes. So advice is critical. And having the right person giving you the right advice at the right time is priceless. They also help negotiate. That's the biggest piece of the buying process that people misunderstand. They think, hey, you know what? The home's listed for $400,000. I'll write an offer for $400,000. The seller takes it and I'm done. There's way more to negotiation than price, but even simply understanding strategy of price is critical, having the right real estate agent that understands how to walk you through that. And so a realtor's job is to explain to you, hey, this house is listed at $400,000 is listed high. It's been on the market for 90 days and nobody's written an offer and they haven't lowered the price. So I think that we can lower the price. I think that we can, offer less on this home and be able to proceed with a lower price. But they might also tell you tomorrow, hey, this house is listed for $400,000. It's underpriced. This house is actually priced less than what it should sell for because it's really probably going to sell for $425 or $430. So if you want it, we've got to offer more. And people misunderstand and think a realtor is just trying to make more money off of me by getting me to pay a higher price. That's not true. The realtor makes very little as a percentage of the price. Getting you to pay $10,000 or $20,000 extra doesn't make them very much money at all. But what it does is it gets you the home. And that's your goal. Your goal is to not to write offers. The goal is to find your dream home and get it accepted. And so you've got to have a realtor that you trust that will negotiate on your behalf. And negotiating doesn't mean getting you a lower price. Negotiating means figuring out what it's going to take to get the offer accepted. And that goes well beyond price. That goes to what I call terms. So terms is how long is the escrow period? How long are the contingencies on the home? What are we offering as an upfront earnest money deposit? Who pays for title and escrow fees? There's so many little things that a great realtor can do in negotiating on your behalf to make sure you get your number one goal, which is to get this offer accepted on this home without overpaying for the home. And that's what a great realtor will do for you. All right. The last thing that I think a great realtor does for you is oversees the details. Make sure that the inspector gets out there on time. Make sure we hit our timelines. Make sure that when somebody needs to come, if you've got somebody that needs to come in to do something, an inspection on the home, that they're going to get out there and make sure they meet that inspector and make sure that everything goes well. A realtor's job is to follow up on the paperwork and make sure there's a lot of paperwork involved with buying a home. And the realtor handles all of those details. So having a great realtor overseeing the details is critical. Now, can I buy a realtor? Can I buy without a realtor? Well, first of all, if you're buying a home where the seller has a real estate agent, then you have one too, because there's something called dual agency. And most of the time, When you are buying a home with only one realtor involved, that realtor is representing both of you. Now, there's times when that's a good idea, but it's pretty rare. It's few and far between. It's kind of like asking an attorney to represent you and the person that you're in a lawsuit against. Not a really wise idea to have somebody representing both sides. So bring your own realtor. It does not cost you more in buying the home if there's already a realtor involved. You want to make sure that when you go to visit a home, the first time you visit any home other than an open house, that you have your realtor with you. Have your realtor be the one that opens the door and shows you the home. There's a California law called procuring clause that says the realtor that opens the home for you, well, they're the reason why you're interested in that home, and they're due the commission on the sale of your home, which means you've essentially hired the person that opened the door for you. So if you go onto Zillow and you click the button saying, hey, I want to see this house, and somebody drives out there and introduces you to the house, introduces you to it. Hi, house. Hi, person. No, they don't do that. But somebody drives out there and they open up the house for you. Legally, you've hired them as your real estate agent, and they're the ones that are supposed to represent you in buying that home. So when you pick a realtor, call that realtor and say, hey, I found a house I love, and I'd like for you to come show it to me. If they're busy, they typically have backup. They have someone else who can help you open that home, and they are still representing you. So that's very, very critical. Now, what about a private sale? People say, okay, John, that's fine. Yeah, if my seller has a realtor, then so do I. That makes perfect sense. But there's times when you're in a private sale. There's times when you're buying a house from your uncle, you're buying a house from your landlord, and you say, you know what? Do we really need a realtor? Well, the fact is, if you go back to the prior slide of what I was talking about, the facts of what the realtor can do for you. Let's see if I can make this work really quick. Oh, hold on, wrong button. All right, so find and access a property. We already found it because you found it in a private sale. Advise. Well, you know what? You really do still need advice, because you still need to figure out, hey, do I need home inspections on this property or not? Is this the right property for me? Or are there other properties out there that are cheaper than this one? Sometimes when you're in a private sale, you get sucked into tunnel vision and you say, oh my gosh, this house is right here waiting for me. I should buy it, especially if you already live in it, especially if you buy from your landlord. By the way, I think it's a great tactic to buy your house you live in from your landlord. You pay nothing in moving expenses. You're already there. You know everything about the home, or at least for the most part, and it makes it easier for your landlord because they already have the buyer right there. Except you run the risk of overpaying if you don't get a realtor involved, because otherwise you're going to be in a position where you're going to say, you know what? Yeah, I mean, I'll buy it. And the landlord says, well, you know, I think it's worth $500,000. You're like, oh, okay, well, let's get the appraisal done. As long as the appraiser agrees. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The appraiser's job is not to come up with their own opinion of value. The appraiser's job is to agree or disagree with what the buyer and seller have already negotiated. So if you pick a price of $500,000 and the appraiser is like, well, houses like this are selling between $450,000 and $500,000. So yeah, I agree that $500,000 is a reasonable price for this home. He'll rubber stamp it. Now, it's not a rubber stamp. There's a process the appraiser goes through, but the appraiser will rubber stamp it and say, yep, $500,000 is what it's worth because homes like it are selling between $450,000 and $500,000. But if you could find the similar home for $450,000 right down the street, is it worth moving? Yes, it is. So that advice from your realtor is critical. So just because it's a private sale doesn't mean you shouldn't use a realtor. They also negotiate on your behalf, and they also oversee the details on your behalf. So it's very, very important, even when you have a family or private sale, to consider having a realtor. The problem is the seller is not expecting to pay a real estate agent. So when your landlord says, I'll sell you the house for $400,000, it's really worth $450,000. Maybe it is and maybe it isn't. But you say, okay, but I want to bring in a realtor and I want a realtor to be part of the transaction. The seller says, no. We get a realtor involved and now I got to pay them. I got to charge you more for the home. Well, that's where the realtor would negotiate. But the truth is, you just tack on the cost of the realtor onto that $400,000 price. And therefore you are the one paying for it. The landlord still gets the $400,000 they wanted. You're just paying a little extra for the home so that the seller can pay the realtor on your behalf. All right, let's talk about some myths about real estate agents. People have said, oh my gosh, Sean, it's always cheaper to use a listing agent because, well, that way they don't have to pay two realtors. They can only pay one. That isn't true. The truth is the listing agreement most of the time with the seller says we're going to pay X percentage that is split between the two agents. And if there's only one agent, they get the whole pie. So it's an incentive to the agent to get your offer accepted, because they'll make twice as much money. That is a benefit to working with the listing agent if you're in a competitive situation. But you got a lot of negatives to go along with that. So you have to decide if that's really worth the cost. Now, some people think I'm stuck with an agent I don't like. You're not. Now, there are circumstances where an agent will have you sign something called a buyer broker agreement. I have mixed emotions about that. I don't really care though. It's the realtor basically saying, I agree, you agree as a buyer that if you buy a home in the next 12 months, you're using me. And if you use anybody else, I still make the commission. I don't have a problem with that, as long as the realtor is willing to back out of it if there's not a fit. If you don't like them, you shouldn't be stuck using them or forced to wait a year to buy a home. So my opinion is, if you have a realtor that wants to do that, I'm fine with that, as long as they're willing to let me out if we have a disagreement. I'm not going to go cheat on you for the fun of it, but if I don't feel like there's a fit, I need to be able to get out of that. The other next myth is more agents mean more options. I kind of alluded to this earlier. Look, having more realtors on your behalf gives you less service, not more. So don't try and have multiple realtors serving you. It serves nobody. Another myth, I should only work with full-time agents. Now, I'm a fan of full-time realtors. I think that people who dedicate all of their time and energy professionally to real estate are typically more in the know, typically sharper at their skills, and are going to do a better job for you. But that isn't always true. So just recognize that a real estate agent that's a part-time agent doesn't make them a bad realtor, but you need to triple check a little bit to make sure that they're sharp and on top of what they're doing, because some part-time agents are very, very part-time and they're selling one house a year while they're doing one other job, and they aren't very adept at what's going on in the market. Okay. The last myth about picking a realtor is my realtor should be available 24/7. I laugh because, I don't know, 10 years ago, the National Association of Realtors ran TV ads that said, real estate agents, we don't have a life so that you can, or something like that, or we work all the time so that you can enjoy your life. Well, that was kind of rude, because it basically said that realtors, your job is to be at my beck and call and do anything I want. And if I want to call you at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning and tell you to come show me a house right now, or 8 o'clock on a Friday night, you better do it. Your realtor has a life. They have a family. How would you feel if your boss called you all the time? Recognize realtors understand. They signed up for a job where their clients, you, work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And so you're not likely available to go see a home during those hours. So you need to be available to look at homes at nighttime and on weekends. But that doesn't mean that they give up their entire life and dedicate their life to you. So just recognize realtors are people too. All right. Let's talk about what inspections I need. So this is always a question that I get, and this is new for this month's How to Buy Masterclass. What inspections do I need when I'm buying a home? So the first one I want to talk about is the appraisal. The appraisal is not an inspection. It's not an inspection. The appraiser visits the home, they take some pictures, they take some measurements, they check to make sure that the basic functions are working and that there's no health or safety issues. So they're walking through the house and they'll tell you, hey, the electricity's not working. Hey, there's a trip and fall hazard over here. But they're doing that really to protect the bank, the lending industry, to make sure that we're not lending on a home that ultimately somebody's going to move into and have a health or safety hazard and sue us for saying, hey, you guys should have known that this house had these problems. So we also don't want the house to burn down, because that's going to be a problem. So the appraiser's looking for health and safety issues, but the appraiser's simply verifying, hey, does the water work? Well, I don't know. I'm going to walk in and turn on the kitchen sink. And while the kitchen sink is on, I'm going to turn it over to hot, because once the water turns hot, I've proven 3 things. I've proven that there's running water. I've proven that the hot water heater works, and I'm proven that there's a sewer system because the water disappeared after I turned it on. So that proves 3 things. And while they're waiting for the water to heat up, they walk over to the stove and they turn on one of the burners, randomly, just one of the burners. It turned on. We have a stove. It works. There's some basic things that the appraiser is looking for, like a permanent heat source is required. I've actually run into a couple of properties recently that didn't have a permanent heat source, and we can't lend on that. We can lend without air conditioning, but we can't lend without heat. And it's got to be a permanent heat source that is typical for the area. So in the East Coast, a potbelly stove, excuse me, that's a permanent heat source that's typical for the area. Here in California, not so much. Potbelly stoves aren't normal. So if somebody put a potbelly stove in and said, that's my heat source, we're not going to believe you. Okay, a freestanding wall heater is not a permanent heat source. So those are the things that the appraiser is looking for. But the appraiser is not checking every sink. The appraiser is not checking every burner. The appraiser is not checking every outlet. They're flipping on a light switch in one of the rooms. Hey, electricity works. I'm good. So the appraiser is not a home inspector, which that's the second thing. So the first part about this list, the appraisal is paid to me. I'll talk to you in a couple of minutes about who we pay and what we pay and when we pay it. But the home inspection, roof inspection, termite, foundation, well and septic, and my realtor's on the call, please tell me if I missed a type of inspection here. But all of those inspections are ordered through your realtor and paid directly to the inspector. The appraisal is ordered through the lender. We collect your credit card and then we pay the appraiser. So what's a home inspection? A home inspection is literally somebody going with a fine-tooth comb through the home. Their chimney, fireplace, or pool. Thank you, Raina. So those are the couple of inspections that I missed: chimney, fireplace, and pool. All right. So it fits into the same general category. Home inspection to me is the most critical because it's kind of the catch-all. Oftentimes, either the appraiser or the home inspector are going to recommend one of the other inspectors if necessary. A home inspector might say, you know what, that roof, or even an appraiser might say, that roof looks a little bit odd to me, and I'm going to put on my report that I recommend you get a roof inspection. Or, hey, the pool didn't seem to be looking quite right, and it smelled kind of weird, and so, you know, most people are going to say that's a problem. A roof inspector, excuse me, a home inspector and an appraiser are more likely to say, that needs further investigation because I don't really know what's causing that, but it does concern me. And so a lot of the roof, termite, foundation, well and septic, chimney, fireplace, and pool inspections are derived from the appraisal or the home inspection being completed, but not always. So the home inspection is the most common. The home inspection is not required by the lender. Do me a favor, never send me a copy. I don't want to know. The truth is, the home inspector's job is to find everything. The appraiser's job is to find the critical things. So I'm okay with a home that the home inspector says there's stuff wrong with. I'm not okay with a home that the appraiser says there's stuff wrong with. And in the lending world, the underwriter, the person who works for the lender that makes the final decision, they have a hard time understanding the difference. When they see something on a home inspection, they're going to say, oh my gosh, that has to get fixed. I can't accept that. So we just save them the heartache and the heartburn, and we don't give them a copy of that report. So the only report I want is the appraisal, and I'm the one that orders it. If the appraisal says I need a foundation inspection, then that's when I need to get a copy of the foundation inspection. If the home inspector says you should get this foundation inspected, go for it. But there's no need to show me. And some people make the mistake and say, I'm going to show the lender because that'll help put some leverage behind the seller giving me a credit to fix it later. Guess what? If I'm aware of a problem with the foundation, there's no fix it later. It's got to be fixed before I'll do a loan on the house. So you actually hurt your ability to buy the house by giving me knowledge of things that are going on with the home. The only thing I need to know is what's on the appraisal report, and I'm the one that orders it and gets it back. So you don't need to send me any reports unless I ask for it. So beyond that, this is really about trusting your real estate agent to guide you on which reports that you need and why. And that's another reason why it's critical to have a great realtor on your side. All right, remember gang, this is interactive. So if you're watching recorded, please put questions in here and I'll jump back in and view the comments and answer you on YouTube or Facebook. If you are watching live on Zoom, please put any questions in here so I can make this as valuable as I can. We're just about at the halfway point. We're hopefully giving you some good information to help guide you through your home buying journey. So another topic that I haven't talked about before is What money do I need and when? So let's talk about this. The first thing you need is the credit report fee. Now, this is something that the industry is starting to shift back to. Years and years ago, you always paid for your credit report up front. And then we stopped and we said, you know what, it's just a cost of doing business. It isn't that much money. Well, this year, credit reports have gone up significantly. The credit report for a single person is about $45, and the credit report for a joint credit application is $75. And fewer people are actually completing the home buying process statistically because there just aren't as many homes for sale. And lenders are in a position where we're writing checks for lots of money for credit report fees, and we don't make enough money to pay for all of that. So many lenders are adopting this policy that we're adopting as well. And that is, hey, when we get started, we're going to do a soft credit report. I'm going to pull that soft credit report and we're going to see roughly where your credit's at. And sometimes I can even issue a pre-approval letter off that soft credit. So the great news is it's free to you and it doesn't impact your credit score at all because it's not a hard inquiry. But if we need to do the hard inquiry, which we always have to do when you get into contract. So if you're not already have done a hard inquiry, you have to do it when you go into contract. But if we need to do one for pre-approval, we're going to ask you to pay us for the appraisal, or excuse me, for the credit report. So it's $45 for a single credit report for a single individual and $75 for joint. But that's really about us trying to keep our costs in check, because the lenders who are letting those costs go up significantly, they've got to raise their interest rates in order to pay for that. Well, do you want to pay a higher interest rate to make up for everybody else's credit report that didn't buy? Or because when you buy, you pay for your own credit report no matter what. So it's really about paying for the credit reports for the people that didn't buy. And that's why the industry is shifting back the other direction and saying, you know what, in the market that we're in right now, in the environment we're in right now, it's better for everybody if we just have each person pay for their credit report. All right, so credit report fee is typically the only fee you're going to pay before you get into contract. As a matter of fact, legally, it's the only fee you're allowed to pay before you get into contract by federal law. The next fee you pay is the appraisal fee. That you pay after you get in contract, and we pay that to the lender. So I would collect your appraisal fee. Depends on what market that we're in, what geographic region that we're in, on how much the appraisal is going to cost. But it ranges anywhere from $500 to $750 on average. That money, once the appraiser's done his report, is spent. If the appraiser says there's problems with the house and you end up not buying it, well, then that's a good thing you paid for that appraisal so that you knew about the problems. The appraiser got their money immediately. Okay. The issue is a lot of people say, John, there's some other concerns. Is what new? Is the appraisal piece new, Raina? Is that what you're asking me? I'm going to keep going. Yeah. No. So the appraisal, the credit report piece is relatively new. We're just implementing it right now at my company. The appraisal piece, we've always asked for appraisals up front. Now, there are some lenders who even to this day don't ask for the appraisal fee up front. They simply have you pay for it at closing. But that's no different than what I just explained about the credit report. 95% of the lenders that I know charge you for the appraisal fee up front because appraisals are pretty expensive. And if you end up not buying, they got to pay for it somehow. So they're raising everybody's interest rates to pay for the appraisals that never closed escrow. So for the same thinking about credit reports, over the last 5 or 6 years, pretty much every lender has been charging for the appraisal at the time you go into contract. Very few allow you to pay it at closing, but it gets paid one way or the other. So it's same concept as the credit report fee, but it's been a common practice for a lot longer that the lending industry has been charging for the appraisal at the time you go into contract. So you need the money for that at the time you go into contract. The next thing you need money for is your earnest money deposits. Now, first 2 questions people always ask, what is an earnest money deposit? Once I explain it, which I will in a moment, then they say, well, how much does mine need to be? I can actually answer the first question a lot easier than I can answer the second one. So the first question is, what is an earnest money deposit? It is the money paid to the title company that they hold. Rain, I'll cover that. Actually, Rain asked me, what's the average cost currently for an appraisal? $500 to $750. Most of them are closer to 500, the 450 to 550 range, with the maximum really pushing up to around 750. So earnest money deposit. You are writing a check to the title company, to the escrow company, and they hold that money and it goes towards your down payment and your closing costs that you're paying later. So if you sat down with me and I said, hey, total out the door, you're going to need $22,000. and you wrote a check for $2,000 for earnest money deposit, then you're only going to need another $20,000 at the end for your down payment and closing costs. So earnest money is simply in advance, an initial deposit towards the money you need for your down payment and closing costs. But really what you're telling the seller is, hey, if I cancel for no good reason, you can keep that money. Well, the more money you put up to say, hey, I promise you that unless there's something major that I find in the appraisal or in the inspections or with my loan approval, I'm buying your home. And if I change my mind because I see something I like better down the street for cheaper, you can keep that money. Like I do that, you can keep my money. So that's what you're telling the other side. That's what you're telling a seller of the home. It's how they know to take you seriously, especially if there's multiple offers that are around the same price with around the same terms. Then one of the few things remaining is, well, how much is the earnest money? How much are they willing to risk if they don't end up buying my home? Now, there's a lot of legal loopholes to when can they keep your money and when can't they? And that's where a great realtor is going to advise you. But the fact is, the second part of this is how much money do I need for my earnest money deposit? There's standards within regions. So a lot of people will say, look, your earnest money deposit should be 1% of your offer amount. Maybe, but that isn't a golden rule. Talk to your realtor. And by the way, the higher your earnest money deposit, the more serious the seller is likely to take you. Doesn't mean they're going to accept your offer at a cheaper price, but it means they're more likely to take you seriously. And so if you don't have a lot of money for earnest money deposit, the truth is there's some great down payment assistance programs. I can help people get into a home with next to nothing. As a matter of fact, I closed escrow today on I had 7 clients that I got locked in for the California Dream for All program, and I've already funded 4 of them. But today I closed escrow on the biggest of them. This client bought a $1.22 million home on the San Francisco Bay on the peninsula in San Francisco Bay area. And they not only didn't have any down payment, they put up had no closing costs. So you paid for all the closing costs of the Dream program. They put up a $30,000 earnest money deposit. They got all of that money refunded back to them, and I even refunded back their $800 they paid for the appraisal deposit. They literally got into this home with $97 being paid towards their mortgage balance as a principal reduction and no money out of their pocket, 0. But they still had to pay the earnest money deposit. They just got it all back. Now, that was the Dream for All program that has a bunch of money that was available. There's still down payment assistance programs that have smaller amounts of money. Combine that with seller credits, I still have options to get you into a home with $0 out of pocket. But you still have to prepay for the earnest money deposit. You still have to prepay for the appraisal fee. So you still need cash to buy a home. And the other thing you need is money for inspections, because the inspections are paid directly to the inspector. And so when you talk to me about, John, how much money do I need to buy a home between the appraisal and the credit report and the down payment and the closing costs, and I'll give you a number. And that's an estimated number, but it's a pretty good estimate. That doesn't include the inspections you're paying to your realtor, through your realtor to the inspector. And so make sure you understand that fact, that you're going to have money that you have to pay for inspections. And that's where you're going to talk to your realtor about it. You theoretically could get every single inspection done, but you're talking about a few $1,000s that in a lot of cases isn't necessary. So that's where you have to make cost benefit decisions to say, you know what, do I really need this report or not? What's it going to cost me? But just remember, the cost of not knowing is now you own a home that you have to deal with the problem because you didn't know that there was a problem. All right. The final thing you need, by the way, the credit report fee is paid again, more and more lenders are doing that. That has not been a common practice, but it's becoming more common. And that's paid pretty early in the loan process. Pretty early in the pre-approval process in a lot of cases. The appraisal fee is paid when you get into contract, and so is the earnest money deposit. The inspection fees are paid very soon after that as the inspectors go out to the home. And you cannot do one inspection at a time and wait for the next one to come back. You don't have enough time. You typically have 10 to 17 days to do inspections on the home. It's impossible for you to say, John, wait to order the appraisal until I get all these inspectors out there. I'm never going to get it done in time. So you have to take the shotgun approach and say, okay, we got to do the appraisal and we're going to do these 3 inspections and we're going to order them all at the same time. It means you're writing a check for all of those at the same time, even though there's a chance that one of them might be the reason you didn't buy the home. You don't have the time to do one of them at a time. And then the down payment and closing costs, you have to have that money about 3 days before you get the keys. So it depends on how long of an escrow we've written. I can close loans in as little as 15 days. That's kind of scary, but it means you can write an offer tonight and I can have you in your home by, what is that, the 12th of May. Think about that. By the 12th of May, if you wrote an offer tonight that got accepted, we can move as quickly as 15 days. Most escrows are around 30 days, but you've got to have that money brought to the title company or to the notary that's signing your paperwork 3 days, approximately 3 days before you close. But I've got to know where the money is coming from when I pre-approve you. So you can't say, I don't know, I'll come up with it later. I won't give you a letter. Because my word is to the realtor that I verified you have the money to cover the down payment and the closing costs. So saying I'll come up with it later, don't worry, I'll prove it to you later, it doesn't work. We've got to be able to prove where it's coming from now, but we don't need it until 3 days before you get your keys. All right. So let's dive into the overall process of buying a home and what do banks look for. I'm gonna move a little bit quicker here. This is stuff that I've covered in previous first-time home buyer or how to buy a home masterclasses. What's the plural of that? Masterclasses. Anyway, all right. What do banks look for? 3 things: cash, credits, and income. So let's go through these really quick. I honestly don't remember if I have slides about each one. I do not. Okay, cool. All right, so let's go back up. Cash, credit, and income. Cash. Cash is the amount of money that you have for down payment and closing costs. Now, if you're buying a primary residence, that money can come from you. It can come from a gift from family. It can come from a down payment assistance program. Those are the 3 ways you can pay for your down payment, and your closing costs can come from there as well as from a seller credit or a lender credit. I'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. The key about cash is bad. Green pieces of paper with pictures of presidents, that's a no-no. I've got to be able to prove where your money has come from. If you get cash, spend the cash, don't deposit it in the bank. Let your paychecks come into the bank, spend the cash, and your paycheck stays there. That's the best way to utilize cash and build up money you can use to purchase a home. But don't freak out if you don't have a whole bunch of money in the bank for 2 months. There's lots of options to help you overcome that issue. So don't let cash stop you from buying a home. Credit is a bigger deal. Credit is how well you paid your bills in the past, because that's the best indicator of how well you're going to pay them in the future. And credit is shades of gray, lots of shades of gray, more than 50 shades of gray, as a matter of fact. That's a joke. Anyway, the fact is that credit is incremental. There's a threshold that says, hey, you got to have at least this credit score to qualify. But if you're barely at that credit score, you're paying the highest interest rate and the highest fee, and it still doesn't guarantee you qualify. Because the loan programs of today use computer algorithms to decide if you meet the criteria. So just because you meet the minimum credit score does not mean that you're approved. It means that you have a ticket to play, and if you're below that number, you're not going to get approved. Credit is something that is hard to get and easy to lose. It's kind of like trust. So you've got to make sure that you follow the right steps. And if you have credit issues, talk to me before you try and fix it. You can actually dig a deeper hole with your credit by trying to fix it yourself. I can run a soft credit, and I can do a simulator. So even if you don't have good credit, I can run your credit as a soft credit. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't impact your credit score. And I can run my simulator to give you really, really good advice on how to improve your credit. Do not try to go it alone. The third key is income. So those are the only 3 things we care about: cash, credit, and income. Income is how much money you have coming in to pay the bills that you're going to have down the road. Because no matter how much down payment you have, no matter how great your credit is, if you're not bringing in enough dollars every single month to pay your bills, you're not going to succeed. Now, we have some specific rules and criteria that we look at in order to determine if your credit is good, if your income is acceptable. In general, we're looking backwards 2 years and forward 3 years. But that's a general statement. There's a lot of times when I can use income that started yesterday, no problem. There's a lot of times when you think that income can be used and you're saying, oh my gosh, Sean, I get this income all the time, like a second job. You say, well, gosh, Sean, I've got 2 jobs. So that's just a regular job. It's a paycheck stub. But the rules say in order for me to count a second job, you have to have had 2 jobs for 2 years consistently. If you only started your second job a year ago, and before that you only worked 1 job, we can't count the second income because the average person isn't willing to work 2 jobs and spend that much time away from their home or personal life. And so we need to know you're committed to it and that you're going to keep doing it for the long term. And so having a second job for a month or a year is not enough. So there's times when you have income that I can't count, and there's times I can count income that you don't think I can. So it's about talking with me. It's never too early to talk with me. If you think you want to buy a home, talk with me as soon as you can. I'm not going to bite. Then the truth is, unless you're ready to buy, I don't need to charge you for a credit report because I can do the soft credit and give you advice based on that. But I'm looking at your cash, I'm looking at your income, and I'm helping you evaluate, do I meet the criteria? Because there's no way, even if I spent 3 hours, that I could tell you all the different circumstances of how it's going to work. I've got to spend an hour with you one-on-one or on a Zoom call and going through your situation and giving you really, really good personalized advice. Now, I told you there's only 3 things the lender cares about. I lied. There is a 4th thing, and that's called the property. Now, the reason why I separate the property out is because the first 3 things, they balance each other out. So if you have a small down payment, I can overcome that as long as you have good credit and good income. If you have not so good credit, I can overcome that as long as you have a big down payment and good income. If you can't prove your income, I can overcome that as long as you have a big down payment and great credit. So the first 3 balance each other out, and we can overcome issues with one by being strong in the other 2. The property stands alone. The property, no matter how good your down payment, no matter how good your credit is, no matter how great your income is, you must have the property that is worth what the value has to be there. So the appraiser has to agree that what the price you're paying is what the house is worth. Now, if the appraiser doesn't agree, that doesn't mean we're dead in the water, but it means that we have to look at things a little bit different. The condition of the property matters. I cannot ignore a foundation issue just because you have great credit, great income, and a big down payment. There are loan programs out there that may be willing to do that, but I can't ignore it simply because, well, the contract says as is, John, so you need to accept the property as is. No, I'm about to loan you $500,000 on a property. I don't need to accept it as is. I say that tongue in cheek, jokingly, but it's true. The fact is the lender's giving you all the money. If there ends up being a major problem with that foundation, we're stuck owning a house that might be only worth $300,000. You walk away from it. It hurts your credit, but you don't have to write a check. We have to write a check for the $200,000 we lost. So it's really important to us the condition of the property is acceptable. The third part about property that most first-time home buyers and even repeat buyers don't understand is the type of property matters. When I say type of property, I'm talking, is this a single family home or is it a duplex? Is it a 3 or 4 unit property? Is it a condo or a townhome? Is it a manufactured home? What type of property it is? The rules for qualification and down payment and interest rate are different between those types of properties. So just because I say you're qualified for a $500,000 loan doesn't mean you're qualified for a $500,000 triplex. You have to recognize the type of property matters. Doesn't mean I can't qualify you for it, but you've got to understand the type of property changes the criteria of how we look at it. All right, we got less than a half hour left, so let's go through some more specifics here. Again, you guys have been way too quiet, so feel free to ask questions at any point in time. So how much money do you need to buy a home? Your down payment and your closing costs are the 2 components. Your down payment minimum is anywhere from 0 to 3.5% down. Now, people misunderstand and they say, oh my gosh, John, I'm a first-time home buyer. I don't have a lot of money for a down payment, so I want to go FHA. Well, if you look here in this chart, FHA is actually the highest required down payment. Every other loan program has options to get you a lower down payment than FHA. Now, I'm not talking you out of FHA by any means. I'm simply saying FHA does not mean cheapest down payments. And every one of these programs has down payment assistance options that can go with it. So don't get tunnel vision and focused on, well, my neighbor said, my mom said. Look, your neighbor and your mom may be very smart people, but unless they're in the real estate and mortgage world, this isn't their forte, it's mine. And so FHA is a great program. It's very, very forgiving, has a lot of flexibility that the other programs don't. but it actually has the highest required down payment. So don't misunderstand that. On top of down payment, you have closing costs. Closing costs average about 3% of your purchase price. So if you're buying a $600,000 home, it's not unrealistic to think you're going to spend $18,000 in closing costs. You're saying, whoa, wait a second, John. If I'm doing a conventional loan with 3% down, that's 18 grand. And then I'm doing closing costs of another 18. I need $36,000 to buy a $600,000 home. Yeah, you know what? You might. The question is, where do you get the money from? Now, there's ways to decrease closing costs, and we can play with the interest rate. Hey, I can give you lower closing costs by charging you a higher rate. And sometimes that's a good idea, and sometimes that's not. But the fact is, you've got to figure out how to pay for it. So your down payment can come from three places. It can come from your money. And that could be savings accounts. That can be retirement accounts. That can be stocks and bonds. It comes from your money. It can come from gift funds. That's a family member saying, hey, I'll give you a gift. Now, you can't use gift funds on investment properties, but I don't know if anybody here is looking to buy an investment property, but that has to be all your own money. Or you can use down payment assistance to pay for your down payment. And there's lots of amazing down payment assistance programs that I have that I can offer. I've got a lot of information on my YouTube channel about down payment assistance programs, and I'm continuing to do videos about new down payment assistance programs. As a matter of fact, tomorrow at noon on most of my social media, so if you go to youtube.com/JohnLoanKing, you will find my main channel. Tomorrow at noon, I'm talking about the newest down payment assistance program called the WISH program. Well, it's not really new. It's been around for years, but it's very seldom used. It's a very, very tight criteria. So you have to be really perfectly fit for it. So it's not unlike the DREAM program that pretty much everybody gets it, and it disappeared like that. This program has really strict income limits. But what it does is it gives you a grant of 4 times the amount of money you put in, up to $29,000. So it's a pretty awesome program for the right person in the right situation. And so if you want information about that program or any of my other down payment assistance programs, check out my YouTube channel and the WISH program I'll be talking about tomorrow, which if you're watching this recorded, that'll be on April 28th at noon. And if it's past April 28th at noon, check it out on my YouTube channel. All right, so you can use down payment assistance programs also to help with your down payment. You have 2 more options for closing costs. By the way, you can use the first 3, your money, gift money, or down payment assistance to pay for your closing costs. But you also have the 2 options of a seller credit or a lender credit. Now, a seller credit and lender credit cannot pay your down payment, but it can help with your closing costs. What's a seller credit? The seller credit is just simply you saying to the seller, hey, I'll buy your house for $500,000, but only if you give me $5,000 towards my closing costs. Well, that means you're not buying it for $500, you're buying it for $495. And so you need to understand that there's almost no difference between doing that and offering them $495, other than that it allows $500,000 or even $495 and not asking for closing cost credits. They're going to take that offer. Where this really works is having a great realtor that understands how to read the market, and that realtor finds a home that's been on the market for a month, and that seller has not lowered the price, and the realtor knows that the listing agent is really pushing the seller to do a price reduction, and the seller's reluctant and saying, oh man, I'm positive my house is worth $500. The listing agent says, well, the market isn't, because nobody's giving you an offer at $500. And here you come on a white horse coming to save the day, and you write them an offer for $500,000 and you ask for $15,000 towards closing costs. And the fact is that the realtor for the seller says, hey, great news, we got a full price offer. And the seller is emotional, feels great, vindicated, proven that their house really is worth $500,000. And they were going to drop the price by 20 grand anyway. So giving you 15,000 for closing costs, no big deal, no big deal. All right, so Andrelli asked me to send information about the WISH program. If you have questions about anything I'm talking about, shoot me an email. My email address will be at the end of this presentation, but it's kingteam@johnloanking.com. I apologize, Andrelli, I'm not going to be able to look back at the chat log and catch who was asking for what. So if you wouldn't mind just sending me an email asking me for that, then myself and my team will grab it and we'll happily get you back the information on that. So that's a seller credit. What's a lender credit? Well, it's kind of the same thing. It's the lender saying, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. Of course, I'll give you money. No. What it is the lender saying, hey, pay me a higher interest rate for the life of the loan and I'll pay some of your fees. Of course I will. I'll pay 3% higher. I'll pay 3% right now for your fees if you'll pay me 1% higher in interest rate for the next 30 years. That's a heck of a deal for the bank, provided we think you're going to keep the loan for 30 years. But right now, the mortgage industry is convinced rates are going to fall and you're going to refinance, which means lender credits aren't really an option right now. Because why would we want to bump your rate by 1% and pay 3% towards your closing costs when that higher interest rate is going to cause you to want to refinance even faster? And we're never going to make back the 3% we paid up front. So right now, super hard to get a lender credit. It's hard, but it's easier to get a seller credit. A few years ago when rates were really low, super hard to get a seller credit, but it was easier to get a lender credit. So it's just about trusting your lender to guide you and to give you the right advice. All right, let's keep going. Assistance programs. There are lots of assistance programs out there. An example, and I've got all this on my YouTube channel. We've got some special grant assistance programs for medical and healthcare workers, law enforcement, firefighters, and people working in education. And there's a really unique program that is for people who are employees of particular counties. So you have to be on the payroll of the county, not a city within the county, but a county employee. And the list is on the screen. So if you need this list, you can email me. I'll get it to you later if you can't see it or didn't have time to read it. But I don't know how this assistance program picked which counties are eligible, but they did. And I don't understand the rhyme or reason behind it. But the fact is there's some really cool down payment assistance programs that I have access to that I'd love to help guide you through. All right. So let's talk about types of loans here. We got about 20 minutes left. I've got a good amount still to cover, and I'm glad I've still got 100% of the people watching me right now. So 3 categories of loans: conventional, FHA, VA, and USDA, and jumbo. So first of all, conventional loans are the meat and potatoes loans. It's the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. I call them the Coke and Pepsi of the mortgage world. Pretty much the same thing. A little bit different recipe, tastes kind of different. If you're a Coke person, unfortunately, Murphy's Law says you go to a restaurant and they'll say Pepsi only. And most of the time you'll accept it. Kind of, very, very similar. There's very little difference between Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. In your eyes, there's zero difference. In my eyes, it's a little bit of a difference in the recipe of what the rules are of how I approve somebody for the loan. That's what's considered a conventional loan. And you saw me say on the previous slide, you can put as little as 3% down on a conventional loan, but 10% down or more is ideal. It gets you the best interest rates, it gets you the lowest mortgage insurance, and it is approvable. In a lot of cases, less than 10% down, you've got to have top tier credit to get a conventional loan. Really, to get that less than 10% down, you need to be over a 740, even though the minimum is 620, and the debt to income ratio is more restrictive. So debt to income ratio is how many dollars are going out compared to the dollars that are coming in. And we use gross income for debt to income ratio, not net. So we're not using your take home pay, we're using your gross pay. All right. Now, how does the next category differ? Well, the next category is what we in the industry call government loans. These are government backed. The first category, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, those are government sponsored, but they're not actually insured or backed by the federal government. FHA, VA, and USDA are explicitly backed by the federal government, and so they offer more flexibility. Now, a conventional loan, you can go up to $726,000 anywhere in the nation, and in some markets, you can go even higher. On an FHA loan, there's some markets that are lower than 726. Matter of fact, I had a client write an offer the other day, and I didn't know he was writing an offer in a different county until the listing agent called me and said, John, is there something I missed? Because this is an FHA offer, and it's $15,000 above the maximum we can do in this county. And I said, what was missed is I didn't know we were buying in that county. And no, he can't buy and he can't go conventional. So they had to cancel their offer. So just recognize the limits for FHA sometimes are the same as conventional, but sometimes the limit is lower. So just be aware of that fact. Your down payment, 0 to 3.5. So lower down payment is ideal. Your ideal credit is a lot lower, even though the minimum is 580. You really want to have 640 or better to get the best terms. And then jumbo. That's loans that exceed the conventional or FHA limits, and those are becoming harder and harder to come by. The truth is, Silicon Valley Bank and a lot of the other banks that have been having issues recently, even who's the bank that just had the, I'm totally lost the name of the bank, that I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal today about their stock price dropping significantly yesterday, and I can't remember the name of the bank. But anyway, it was caught up in that whole issue with Silicon Valley Bank. Those banks loaned a lot of their deposits out for mortgages. And now they're pulling back. They're shutting down. They're saying, hey, we're not loaning money for mortgages. And what they loaned was jumbo mortgages. Now you're reading in these articles that, oh yeah, they loaned, $25 million to Mark Zuckerberg to buy his mansion. They did, but they also loaned $1 million to the guy that owns the company down the street where you work. Like, that's the kind of loans that they were doing. And those are becoming harder to come by. They exist. They always will. But right now we're in a season where those loans are getting more difficult and getting more expensive. So the criteria is tightening and the rates are increasing on jumbo loans. Typically you need 20% or better down payment, 740 or better credit score, and really the minimum is 700. Very few jumbo loans below a 700 credit score. So let's kind of talk through the process of buying a home. We got about 15 minutes left. It's tough right now. We're going through so much change with the economy. We've got a recession on the horizon. By the way, please don't misunderstand. A recession does not mean lower house prices. That happened only once in all the recessions in the last 100 years. Only one recession led to house prices dropping. And that's because in 2007, the recession was caused by bad mortgages. The bad mortgages caused the housing prices to drop, which caused the recession. The recession did not cause housing prices to drop. In every other recession, when a recession happens, interest rates go down. And when interest rates go down, people want to buy homes, which causes house prices to go up. So recession equals lower rates and higher house prices, not the other way around. That is a very misunderstood fact. But let's be real. Buying a home is a tough process. And so I like to give the analogy, it's like flying in an airplane. And the truth is, when you fly in an airplane, you can come to expect some turbulence. Matter of fact, this clear air turbulence thing is getting scary. People getting thrown all around the cockpit or all around the plane. But the fact is, look, turbulence happens. And it's not a sign of a bad pilot. It's not a sign of a bad airline. It's just a fact of the process. And that's what's going to happen when you're buying a home. Things come up that are beyond our control. My job, like the pilot's job, is to look at the horizon and figure out what challenges we could run into. But it's also my job to make sure that if we can avoid those challenges, we do it. And if we can't, that I tell you to put on your fasten seatbelt, or tell you to fasten your seatbelt before we hit the turbulence or as it starts. That's my job, is to guide you through it. And sometimes the best way to guide you through it is to fly straight through it. But don't worry. You worry when the flight attendants are worried about the turbulence. If they're not worried about the turbulence, don't worry about it. That's just normal. Same with us. I'll tell you if it's something to worry about. Your realtor will tell you if it's something to worry about. 9 times out of 10, it's nothing. It's just normal turbulence. We're not sure how we're going to resolve it, but we know it's resolvable because we often have 3 or 4 ways to resolve it. We just have to work through it. All right, let's talk about the actual process of buying a home. The first step is getting pre-qualified or pre-approved. That really needs to be step number 1 before you go out looking for a home. So that involves talking to me and looking at your credit, looking at your income, looking at your assets, getting a game plan for how much you expect to pay per month. I'm going to give you a number that says, I'm going to let you spend this much. I talked to the client yesterday and I said, look, I'm going to let you spend $4,000 a month for a house payment. He goes, John, I can't spend that. I would never spend that. And I said, that's good news. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, it means that you can buy anything you want because you're going to say no before I am. He's like, wow, that's really good to know. And I said, yeah, now let's talk about the reality. The reality is the house you want is about a $3,000 a month payment. Are you okay with that? Well, that's more than what I wanted to spend. Well, that I can't change. The question is, are you willing to spend that? If you are, great. I'll let you spend more. So therefore, if you find a house a little bit more expensive and you fall in love with it, I'm okay with it, because if the payment ends up being higher than I'm going to approve, you'll have already said no. So that's really where we go back and forth of what are you comfortable with? What will I let you spend? And we've got to find a number that meets both criteria. Once you get pre-approved, you go out and shop for a home. That process can take anywhere from a day to a year. And it's really about being clear about what you're looking for and what your goal is. If you want to be a homeowner, you can be a homeowner and you can make it happen quickly. But you have to understand there is no such thing as the perfect house. So you have to be clear on what is a must-have versus what is a nice-to-have, and be very, very open with your realtor about what you're looking for in a home and give them regular feedback. This market right now, there's not a lot of homes for sale. And so it isn't about settling, but it's about being clear on what you're looking for and that you're willing to accept things within a range, and it doesn't have to be the house. You can sell this house and buy another one later. You're not always looking for the final house. Especially as a first-time home buyer, you have to think about becoming a homeowner and then upgrading to the right home. You're not always going to get the right home as your first home. Once you get your offer accepted, that's when we can lock in your interest rate. Between now and then, rates will go up and down, and there are options to lock early, but it really doesn't make sense. You're buying an insurance policy that has a deadline to it. Kind of like buying term life insurance. It says, hey, I'm buying a life insurance policy that pays out if I die in the next 6 months. Unless you know you're going to die, in which case they won't sell you the policy. That's not really a good idea to do. And locking an interest rate before you get into contract, you have 60 to 90 days to find a home and get into contract. And if you don't, you've lost the upfront lock money that you spent. So it really isn't a good idea to try and lock early. You lock once you find a home. There is a contingency built in on the purchase contract where your realtor says interest rate not to exceed blank, which means if the rate exceeds that, you can cancel the contract and say, hey, it didn't meet the terms that I had expected. Now, you can't write an offer today saying interest rate not to exceed 4. You could, but a good seller is not going to accept that because they know interest rates are not in the 4 or 3% range. So it's about having a good realtor, like I talked about earlier, that's going to guide you. Once you get that offer accepted and we lock your interest rates, that's when you go through the processing and underwriting of the loan. That's where the final decision maker is taking a look at the loan, dotting our I's and crossing our T's. That process from start to finish can take as little as 15 days. On average, it's about 21 to 30. And then in the end, you're signing your papers with the notary and you're moving into your brand new home. So let's wrap up here. I have time for questions at the end, but I want to cover a couple of things here as we wrap up. And I want to talk about what are the financial benefits of owning a home. And it's critical to understand this because a lot of people think, okay, well, I pay $2,000 a month in rent, and so I don't want to spend more than $2,000 a month for a house payment. You get zero financial benefits for renting, zero. You don't get any tax write-off for being a renter. None of the payment you make to your landlord is given back to you through a forced savings account, and none of the value increase on your landlord's home goes to you in the form of appreciation. You get nothing. So when people say, John, I don't want to spend more than the $2,000 a month I'm spending, well, sometimes you got to think you are going to build so much wealth through home ownership that maybe you need to stop investing money in other places, at least temporarily. Maybe you say, hey, I'm going to cut back on my 401k contribution because I'm going to make a whole bunch of money in being a homeowner. And it isn't just about crossing your fingers and hoping values go up. That is the third of these 3 things is appreciation, but a tax write-off you get no matter what. Now, tax write-offs are going to change depending on what tax bracket that you're in. But in this scenario, somebody in a 30% tax bracket that has a $350,000 home that they put 30 or 10% down on, they're saving $590 a month in potential tax savings. Again, see the asterisk. For illustration purposes only. For specific tax guidance, please consult your tax advisor. Okay, so tax savings is a big piece. Forced savings is a bigger piece, not necessarily in dollars, but in certainty. Because every time you make a monthly payment on your mortgage, a portion of that is principal. Now, in the beginning, it's not very much. In the beginning, on a $320,000 home, $300 a month is going towards principal. But guess what? That's $300 more than what you get in your rent payment going towards principal. So simply with forced savings, a $2,300 mortgage payment is equal to a $2,000 rent payment, because $300 a month of your payment is going to pay down on your balance, which means you're going to owe less money on your mortgage when you go to sell it. Even if the house price never changed and it just stayed the same. Well, you owed $320 at the beginning, and in 15 years, you owe $225. That means that you have $125,000 in equity in the home, even if the price didn't go up, simply because you're throwing money into that forced savings account by paying down your principal. And then the third benefit of wealth building is appreciation. That's the house price going up. This is simple in saying, look, if that $350,000 home only went up 2% per year, by the way, the average in the state of California is 5% per year appreciation. But let's just assume 2%. That means you're getting $7,000 a year in increased home value, which is $583 in your pocket. You add that together and you're getting almost $1,500 in wealth building every single month. So really, a $3,000 a month mortgage payment is the same as a $1,600 rent payment. When you look at the long-term impact, you're actually making more, building more wealth and saving more money by paying $3,000 a month in a mortgage payment than you are having $2,000 a month in a rent payment. But you may need to adjust your budget because you got to be able to write that check every month for $3,000. So slow down the money you're putting in the money market. Slow down the money you're putting into the college savings plan. Be smart about this. Don't make short-term rash decisions. I'm not saying don't save for college, especially if you have kids that are coming up on college. You got to have a game plan. But don't simply say, I can't afford it because it's more than what I'm paying in rents. All right. Let's go here. All right, so I want to get everybody, I have a video here about it. I'm not going to play it, but I have on my mobile app, if you scan this QR code, you can download my mobile app. It will actually serve not only as a payment calculator by clicking on the calculator tab down on the bottom, but it will also serve as your portal to communicating with me. It's got a chat feature where you can communicate with me. It also has where you'd input your loan application. So if you're ready to start the process, you're like, John, I've been listening to you for an hour and 25 minutes. Can you just shut up and tell me how to get started? This is where. So you download my mobile app, you've got the calculator, you've got the loan application, and you have the ability to upload your documents to me directly through that app. You can even use the phone on your camera. The camera on your phone as a scanner, and it doesn't save it to your camera roll, which is critical. When you're actually, people take pictures all the time of sensitive documents and then send them to me. And that saves it into your camera roll and it sends it across the ether through the internet and it's not secured. But if you use my mobile app, when you take a picture, it doesn't save it to your camera roll and it uploads it directly into my portal. It doesn't go across the email servers. So it is super, super secure. It's the best way to send private information such as your paychecks and tax returns and that kind of thing. All right. So I want to wrap this up with a lot of things that we've talked about, but I want to make it clear about who you pick for your financing matters. I said earlier, I'm interviewing for this job. Just like you're going to interview real estate agents to pick a realtor, or you already have, I'm in the interview process to interview to be your lender. And so I want to talk about the 5 things that I think matter. First is the reputation of the lender. Do they have a good reputation? Because the lender can make or break a deal. My knowledge of my job can determine whether I'm going to catch something early or not. The second piece is pre-offer. What am I doing before the offer is written to help get your offer accepted? I am calling the listing agent. I'm sending an email to the listing agent following up to make sure they got the offer and that they don't have any questions. And I follow up with my recommendations and my reviews so that they know that I'm good at what I do and that I've taken great care of my clients. When necessary, we can fully underwrite your credit, your income, and your assets to make it a stronger offer if that's what's called for. And we can help you remove contingencies quicker. Sometimes you can even remove contingencies before you write the offer, depending upon whether we've done a full underwriting approval or not. And we can help you close quickly, which is a key when you're competing against cash. Because the cash buyer says, hey, I can get you your cash in 10 days. Well, I can get you your cash in 15 days. It just happens to come in the form of a mortgage, but the seller gets the cash just the same. And so having the ability to close quickly is because we are the bank. We are your lender. We're not a broker that's sending it to an outside company. We're the direct lender. We're the 28th largest mortgage company in the nation, and we don't loan somebody else's money. We loan, well, we do. We loan the money that comes from the federal government via Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, and VA, and I'm here to make this a smooth process for you. So this is the last slide. This is my opportunity. If you guys have more questions, please feel free to post them into chat. The top QR code is my mobile app. So if you're ready to move forward, if you don't have the QR code, or if you're on your phone right now, you can go to apply.johnloneking.com. Takes you to the same place. You don't have to download the mobile app. You can also use it just from your browser or your computer browser. The second QR code is my YouTube channel. So I have 2 YouTube channels. I have this one, John Lone King. That's my main channel. I talk about all things mortgage. I'm doing the live streams every single Friday. Tomorrow's live stream is about the Wish program. I have home buying tips and real estate news. I also have another YouTube channel I started about 45 days ago. It actually has more views on it than my old channel that I've had for 12 years. That channel is called California Dream for All. It was originally designed to talk all about the new program that came out that we expected to last a lot longer. So I'm repurposing it a little bit to talk about how to make the California dream come true for all first-time home buyers that are thinking about buying a home. And so it's going to talk about Dream for All, and that money will come back at some point in time. And so you want to make sure you like and subscribe to that channel, but it's also going to talk about other things related to being a first-time home buyer. This webinar will be on there. Other webinars about different down payment assistance programs are going to be on there. And it's really my way to help keep you informed through the process. So as you are thinking about buying a home, as you have friends and family who are thinking about buying a home, don't forget every single month I do this masterclass. So you go to howtobuymasterclass.com. About the last 30 minutes, 40 minutes is the content I do every time. But the first hour was different every single time. So make sure if you have questions in the future, please reach out. If you have ideas of videos you want me to record, please reach out as well. Otherwise, gang, I'm pushing after 8:30 and I've got to go spend some time with my amazing wife and children. So I appreciate your time tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to interview, to be your lender, and I'm looking forward to taking great care of you. Thank you, Andrea, for the kind words. Everybody, if you have any questions, post them into comments. Otherwise, thank you, and good night.